Welcome, Rocker Nation, to my review of the Boise State versus San Diego State game. You'll notice I'm in a little bit of a different setup here. Like most of you, I am visiting family for Thanksgiving. Hope all of you had a great Thanksgiving, even if today didn't necessarily go as we intended for it to. Before I start off on this, I want to open up with a couple of comments about post-game comments that I've been reading. There's a lot of fans out there that are taking this loss very hard because this last run that Boise State has been on versus the 2-3 start to the season that we had, this last 5-1 run that Boise State had been on, where they'd won 4 games in a row here after that loss to Air Force, beat Fresno State in there, looked really good on that run, had got a lot of fans, even though they'd been down early in the season, had got them back up into the hopes that Boise State was back. I mean, as Boise State fans, we're so used to success. If we see any glimmer of it, we latch onto it, and we just think, all right, Boise State's back. We don't have anything to worry about now. And I think a lot of fans got back into that mindset. So that's why, even though Boise State just lost on the road against a top 25, one-loss San Diego State team, where Boise State, especially early, looked very good in this one against a very good team out of the Mountain West. It's going to represent the conference in the Mountain West Championship game for the West Division, and potentially there even represent them in a big bowl game. Even though that is the level of competition that Boise State was going up against, a lot of fans are acting like Boise State just lost to UNLV or something. They're acting like it's the Boise State of 2009 getting defeated on the road. And that's not where Boise State is at yet. Boise State, this was, and with a bowl game left, is still a rebuild year. I've been saying it all season long. I've been saying it when we were down. I've been saying it when we were up. I've been saying it when we were 2-3. I've been saying it now after beating Fresno State. I've been saying all along that this is a rebuild year. We have a brand new head coach, a brand new offensive coordinator, and a brand new defensive coordinator, and a brand new special teams coordinator. I mean, we have brand new coordinators and players and coaches throughout this entire team. So when you look at this team, you can't look at them with the eyes of Boise State teams, of every Boise State team past bygone eras. This is a new team that's being created by a head coach who is hungry for success, hungry for wins, bringing passion and energy that I haven't seen in Boise State in a very long time. But it's going to take time for that passion and energy to translate into consistent success. Now, we're going to talk about this game. I'm going to talk about some of the issues that plagued Boise State in this one that they are correcting and I think will correct next season. I'm going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about the game overall. But Boise State here is developing a team, a mindset here that is going to pay big dividends into the future, into next season. And Boise State this season has been more aggressive on defense and on offense in the play calling. Not that the play calling has been perfect, obviously, but more aggressive in their play calling overall, and far more aggressive on defense than I've seen them out of any Boise State team over the last few seasons. I mean, this is a Boise State team that is attacking that future aggressively, and they're going to go after it and have great seasons here in the next couple of years. I think that the way that this Boise State team has performed, based on how they performed last year, what they were working with, and the change from the beginning to the end of the season, I think that this Boise State team, even though they're coming off a loss to San Diego State in this game, we're looking at a team that even next season could be contending as one of those top teams in the Group of 5, and the season after that, so 2 years from now, is going to be the top team in the Group of 5 once again. They have the way that this coaching staff has adapted and fixed issues throughout the season. Obviously, a lot more to fix coming off a loss here, but the way that this coaching staff has adapted to and fixed and grown throughout the season shows me that there is great confidence for this program going forward. The second thing that I've been seeing off of comments off of the game on Facebook, reactions to this game. And I want to address 2 of those right off the bat. So the first one is a bunch of people saying that, and they've been saying it all season, is that Tim Plow needs to be fired. That has to say that about a first-year offensive coordinator who is coaching for his first time ever at the FBS level, coming off a great success at the FCS level. So coaching at his first time at the FBS level, who has shown the ability to draw very creative plays, if not the overall awareness yet to know when to call them throughout the game. To call for him to be fired in his first season has got to be one of the most ignorant things that I have seen in any fan group. And it's not just Boise State. I mean, other fans are guilty of it as well in their own teams. But to see that on a Boise State page, I hold Boise State fans to a much higher standard. And to see that on a Boise State page is very disappointing because, first off, like I said, Tim Plow has shown the ability to be very, very creative and explosive. More creative, honestly, than any offensive coordinator I've seen in the last 6 years for Boise State. The ability to draw up plays that just leave you going, wow, I can't believe they pulled that off. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I think back to the game against Colorado State, the two rushing touchdowns, or I guess one was a screen, but the back-to-back touchdowns that they had against Colorado State, where they played off of what the offense had been doing all game, that they knew the defense was ready for, played off of that with either a fake pass up the middle or a fake off of a halfback or off of the play action pass to throw the screen pass and then the wide receiver end around for the touchdown. I mean, both of those were some of the most creative play calls I've ever seen. And we've seen that in almost every single game. There's been that creative play calling element in the background. What Tim Plow is missing right now is the awareness and knowledge to keep drives going, to know when it's okay to slow down, know when you need to keep things hot and intense, know what plays you need to do to keep your quarterback in rhythm, to keep the offense in rhythm. Right now, Boise State is honestly shooting themselves in the foot more than the defense is stopping what Tim Plow is doing, because Tim Plow is kind of stopping himself by getting into a groove and then killing it, where we'll see Boise State get a lot of quick passes off, mid-range passes, and then, boom, runs up the middle, and that's it. So Tim Plow is doing especially considering where he's coming from and what he's gotten himself into here at the FBS level, is doing an exceptional job. And I think with a full season now under his belt, and he's the kind of guy who's going to go hold himself to a high standard and run through and figure out how to develop and get better, I think we're going to see a completely different place or offensive style of calling next season for Boise State. The second thing is that people are saying that this is one of the worst Boise State teams that you've ever seen. And that's not even statistically true. I mean, the 2015 team and the 2005 team were definitely worse than this team. So to say that is, first off, not even statistically true. But the fact is that this Boise State team is actually one of the better, yes, record-wise, no, but as far as what this team is, the performance, what they're putting onto the field, this is one of the better Boise State teams that I've seen in a while. Especially compared to last season's Boise State team that lost to San Jose State, that then lost to Ball State and got demolished by BYU. I mean, those are basically the same players that have been taken, put into this offense, and now beat BYU, a top 15 team, on the road, beat Fresno State, should have beat Oklahoma State, did beat Oklahoma State, but the referees took it away, and were close in this game, and then the rest, if you take this game out, the other 4 losses were only by 23 points. So last year's Boise State team would have not had anywhere, I mean, last year's Boise State team would probably gone 6-6 this season and would have been blown out by a lot of those teams that Boise State was either close to winning or managed to beat this season. So first off, that is an incredibly ignorant statement to say that this team is one of the worst Boise State teams that you've ever seen. This is a rebuild year. Boise State has never had a first year, it has never had a head coach that has joined the program that was not on the coaching staff the previous year before or had been a head coach before. So the fact that Andy Avalos is coming into this without having been part of this program, so he recently, I mean, obviously he was part of this program as defensive coordinator, but been part of the recent passage of this program, so knowing what this team can bring to the table, not knowing that is. So the fact that he doesn't have that experience, and the fact that he doesn't have the experience as a head coach, and he's been able to make such huge steps in his first year, tells me that the ceiling is unlimited for Andy Avalos. And then, to my knowledge, Boise State has never had to replace all 3 position groups, offensive, defensive, and offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator, had to replace all of them with at least 2 of those coming from other schools and not being on the staff previously. I mean, this is a first situation. When I say this is a brand new program for Boise State, it is a brand new program. It's always going to be connected to its past, and it has its past in it here with Andy Avalos and other members on this coaching staff that have been part of this program previously. So it is connected to its past, but it is not a team that has really any continuity with its recent past. This is a brand new Boise State team that this head coaching staff is developing to go forward and attack the future here. So no, this is not the worst Boise State team that we've ever seen. This is not Tim Plow does not deserve to be fired. In fact, I think what he has put on the field should give Boise State fans confidence in him, going off of the expectation that going into next year, he will improve. Now, if we go through all of next season and we see the same performance as we did this year as far as the play calling, then there may be calls for concern. Not to be fired. I mean, I think you should give every coach 3 years to establish themselves before you put them on the hot seat. So absolutely not to be fired. But next season, there might be calls for concern and maybe put a little pressure on him to do better the year after that. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I absolutely do not think that's going to be the case with Tim Plow, the style and type of coach that he is. I do not think there's going to be any issues with Boise State moving forward in the future and being a better team next year offensively than they were this season. So, looking specifically at this game, we'll go first here with the offense. Before I get into the specifics of the plays, I want to talk about 4 things that overall concepts in this game that happened that have been issues for Boise State all season or happened because of things I said Boise State should change and they didn't. So the first thing here is going back to last week, the New Mexico game. Boise State offensively, they went stagnant in that game on purpose, according to Tim Plow, because they realized they were going to be able to stop New Mexico and they didn't need to put everything on the field. They wanted to keep some things hidden for the San Diego State game. That is a concept that sometimes it works, sometimes it's great. You know, if you have a team that has been consistent all season, they're already in rhythm with each other, they aren't missing any key starters. You know, they're a veteran team that is consistent and knows how each other play and is able to come off a hot start, regardless of how they played the game before. That can work. But when you're working with a unit like this, that is adapting to a new offensive style, so they are getting used to it this season, that are missing key players. I mean, Octavius Evans was out for this one. We didn't see Van Buren today, so I believe something was up with Van Buren. And C.T. Thomas, of course, not here, not in the program anymore. So missing some key players that they had at the beginning of the year or that have helped them throughout this season. And you're also with a program that even the key players that have been on the field, even going back to last season, have not been consistent every game. When you take a team like that and you basically freeze them for a full game and you don't allow them to get into a rhythm and you play a different style and you try to establish some things that you don't usually see, that team is going to have an incredibly difficult time getting off to a fast start in the next game. It's basically like coming off of a bye week for that team at that point. And that is incredibly hard for a team for this specific team with a brand new coaching staff, which is coming through in this rebuild year. That is incredibly hard. You basically pump the brakes on your entire team and stall them out. And that's what we saw in this one. I mean, Bachmeier, he looked off throughout basically the whole game, was pushing the ball into places he shouldn't, overthrowing, underthrowing. I mean, it wasn't really just one thing. I mean, he was doing all of it pretty much. He had some key moments and some great plays, but there are a lot of inconsistencies. Wide receivers were missing passes or dropping passes that they definitely should have been catching. Capels for I think it's Capels. I am struggling to pronounce his name at this early point in his career, but Capels there dropping a key pass there on third down, even though he caught some good ones later. Overall, though, and a running back that is just getting back into the flow of the game, an offensive line that's getting used to him as well. So, I mean, Halani, he's basically 4 games into his season because he wasn't playing 100% before that. You take all those together and you add the fact that they are coming off of basically a game where they didn't play their offensive style, was basically around the bye week, you're going to see the issues I think we saw today where you can't connect, you can't keep drives going, you're struggling in both the passing and the run game. It all makes sense based off, and that was a key to my game against New Mexico. I said Boise State needs to maintain their full playbook, their full offense, the whole game so they can come into this one hot. I think if Boise State had done that, if they had worked on their offense, not just worked on some aspects of it like the long ball and the deep and the run, which is what we saw against New Mexico, if they'd worked on their full offense, had their full playbook open, which San Diego State has already seen. When you're playing your 12th game of the season, there's not a lot that you have hidden. So San Diego State already knows what Boise State's doing. They already have all the game film, and they're watching it, and they're developing on it. So when you have all of that already out there, just run it. Get into the flow. Use that game as a warm-up game to come into this one, especially a game of this level where you need your team to be performing at 100%. I think if Boise State had followed my key of the game last week versus New Mexico, we'd have seen a different performance in this one. The other issue here that Boise State saw, not testing the backups all season. Specifically at the quarterback position. I've been calling, and other fans, for other reasons, have been calling for Sears to see playing time all year. I 100% think that Bachmeier is the right quarterback for this offense. And even after today's performance, I still think that. I think that he was more hampered by the fact that he came into this one basically cold from basically a 2-week break because he didn't really play the full offensive style against New Mexico. I think that impacted him more than anything else. So I'm still on Team Bachmeier, of course. But I think that Sears has a lot to contribute to this team. And unless he's injured, which I don't know, he didn't look injured. He didn't look like 100% in his running abilities necessarily, but he looked like he was good to go. So the fact that Boise State has not used him all season is just absolutely mind-boggling. And I think it is representative of a brand new head coaching staff that doesn't know when to throw out a new quarterback out there situationally and when to pull them back off the field. They don't know how to do that quarterback rotation because that's really the sign of a veteran coaching staff knowing, okay, this is a situation where we can throw our quarterback out there. This situation is going to play to his specific skill sets, and it's not going to stump or stall out our quarterback or who might be on a hot streak, and now we throw in this other quarterback, and now he's got to get back into rhythm of things. All those decision making is part of a veteran coaching staff, which obviously this coaching staff is not at that level yet. So I think that has played into it. But regardless of what the reasons are, whether it was injuries or lack of experience and know-how on when to put a quarterback out there, or stuff we weren't seeing as fans that was happening in the practice fields and in those coaching discussions, whatever the reason was, that decision. Again, whatever the reason for that decision, but that decision impacted Boise State heavily in this one because Sears came out, was expected to run the full offense for the first time this season, basically, was expected to take the rest of the game. We had 4 minutes left in the game. Boise State still had a chance to go in and win this one. They could have won. They could have gone down. They could have scored a quick field goal or even a touchdown, gotten the ball back, which the defense did get the ball back even after Boise State stalled out. So they could have got the ball back, gone down, and won this game. And if we were looking at a quarterback who had been tested all season, who knew how to run this full offense, we would have seen something, I think, very different. He came out there and he looked like a fresh-faced quarterback because he was. Not only had he seen no game-time situation in that game, he hasn't seen any true game-time situation all season long. So, of course, he was holding on to the ball too long and got sacked, or was forced, holding on to the ball too long and was forced to run. He was sacked on that one. So, of course, he was holding the ball too long and got sacked. And, of course, he didn't know where to dump the pass off and was forced to run. You don't have your full playbook available to you on 4th down and short. So you go with, even though it's 4th and inches or 4th and 1, you go with a wildcat snap, deep wildcat snap, and, of course, it gets blown up. I mean, you severely limit yourself in that situation. Oh, and then he comes out the next time on his next drive and throws an interception because he isn't in tune with any of these wide receivers. He doesn't know where they're going to be on the field, and he's rusty. And so he underthrows the ball, which is completely out of position anyway, and gets picked off. It's exactly what you'd expect to see out of a fresh quarterback who has not played at all. Take my other team, Liberty, for example. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation there in Malik Willis, yet the backup, Bennett, has been getting playing time throughout the season. They brought him in situationally, and when he's come out in the second half, he has played the full offense. They haven't just run the ball. He's played basically the full offense, and that when they need him in crunch time situations, if Willis comes out because his helmet's off, they throw the ball with him because he is in tune with this offense. Boise State had a similar situation where they had a great quarterback in Hank Bachmeier and a great quarterback on the bench in Sears, and they could have used both of them, and they didn't this season, and that hurt them this year. That really hurt them this year in not using Sears' key skills situationally, especially at the goal line, where I think his running ability and accurate passing would have worked out in Boise State's favor, and then in this situation when he comes in late and isn't able to do anything because he's fresh. The other two issues here was not focusing on spreading the ball out to a lot of wide receivers as an intentional move. Boise State's been doing it late here in the second half of the season, so that was not so much a big point. I kind of jotted that one down. But, you have a key wide receiver go out like Octavius Evans, and then it's basically just Shakir out there. I mean, Boise State has talent in this wide receiver room that is burgeoning talent. It's not quite shown itself fully there, but I think that shows a lack of development really than anything else. I mean, Boise State, especially early on in the season, they were so focused in on 3-4 main wide receivers there in Shakir, Cobbs, Evans, and C.T. Thomas. And it took a while to get these other guys like Cutter, like Billy Bowens, like Capels into the game. It took them a while there to actually start using their skill sets. And I think if we had developed those more early on in the season and really kind of here late in the season, you wouldn't see Boise State or Bachmeier feeling like he has to go to one guy and looking at Shakir every single play, basically. So that was a major factor. And then the fourth one here, it's bit Boise State all game, and this is a legitimate downside to this is a legitimate downside to Tim Plow, or legitimate critique to Tim Plow and his offensive style, is a lack of creativity in the run game. I mean, Boise State's seen it all year. That, and I was talking about it on the Boise State live feed that the Bronco Nation Updates puts up, because Boise State just keeps running it up the middle. And I said, does Boise State have a play call for the running back that isn't a dive up the middle, or an inside run of some form up the middle? Because I don't know that I remember Boise State running very many of any outside runs. Boise State is pretty much every single play is right up the middle. And I think that's because Tim Plow, air raid style guy, he's not used to drawing up and designing running plays. And so he is focused on the creativity in the passing game and the creative running game, mixing in wide receivers, mixing in wildcat, using the quarterbacks in the run game. I mean, he's used to developing that, and he's done a good job of developing that. But as far as a true running back, hand the ball off to the running back running game, there is very little to any creativity. I mean, 90% of the time, that running back is going to dive straight up the middle into the teeth of the defense. And it's not necessarily a Tim Plow problem. I mean, that was also a Brian Harsin problem, and his offensive coordinator's issue. I mean, Boise State has kind of gone into this mode, this style of play calling the last 3 or 4 years it's seen, where they just pretty much run the ball right up the middle. And especially when you got a playmaker like Helani, who has speed, who has maneuverability. I mean, he was getting hit in the backfield pretty much every play, and he was still making something out of nothing. If you give him a handoff on the outside, or you give him some creative running abilities, some zone plays or something like that to the outside, or not zone, what am I thinking of? Some comeback running plays. I'm forgetting the exact technical term for it. Anyhow, but if you give some more creative running plays for this running back, he's going to be able to impress. I mean, this isn't Van Buren. This isn't Hibibilikio. This is a running back that combines the skill levels of both those into one player. He has the power and the maneuverability, and you give him some ability to run outside, he's going to impress. And Boise State didn't try this whole game to run outside, and they haven't really this whole season. So that is a real issue, that lack of options in the running game. Not necessarily lack of options with the playmakers, which was an issue early in the season with the offensive line and the playmakers available. That's not an issue Boise State has anymore. They still have the issues on the offensive line, but they have an amazing running back in George Helani here. But counter, that's what I was looking for. Counter. Sorry, that's the running word, the technical term I was thinking of. Anyhow, Boise State doesn't have personnel. Boise State doesn't have a personnel issue in the running game now. Now it's a lack of creative play calling in the running game, which is really biting them. I mean, despite that, Helani still had 70 yards rushing, despite lack of creativity in the running game, despite getting hit in the backfield or having to maneuver around players in the backfield almost every single time. He still had 70 yards rushing. If you talk about yards after contact, he probably has like 100 because he was getting hit like 3 or 4 yards deep every single play. So it's unfortunate that he wasn't able to make something out of nothing on that fourth down conversion. But you can't expect a player to go out and just do it all every single play. And that really comes down to the play calling on that one. So a lot of issues that Boise State's been working with. They have done a great job of fixing issues. I mean, there's so many things at the beginning of the season that don't plague Boise State now. I mean, defensive line play, for the most part, completely fixed. Their secondary coverage, complete reversal. I mean, the defense has gone from a true weakness for Boise State to a strength for them, and we'll talk about the defense later on here. Offensively, Boise State has, for the most part, figured out how to move this ball in a creative manner. They, at times, slow themselves down, but they have been able to fix some issues on the offensive line. They have been able to fix some issues with the wide receiver core, and they have fixed some issues here in the running game. Boise State is a completely different team from the beginning of the season, but they obviously still have a lot of things to work through as they continue to rebuild under this new head coaching staff. So real quick, I've already spent a lot of time talking about the future and general issues overall, so I'm not going to spend too much time discussing specifically the elements of the loss here, but I will delve into them here a little bit. So offense overall, C+ performance overall. I think that's fair. 228 yards passing, 91 yards rushing for Boise State in this one. And they really, they got up quickly, 16 points, because of emphasis on the passing game. Boise State was really being creative. We saw 2 amazing passing plays early on in this one where they faked off the play action pass, they faked it to the running back, and then they threw it to the tight end to Rafdell, to 87 there, so to Rafdell there, Rafdell. So Great play call. He was wide open. They didn't expect it. Mixing in the tight ends, a classic Boise State move there. Something, again, that we didn't really see for much of this game other than that one play. So mixing the tight ends, great move. He has shown the ability to be a good receiver for Boise State throughout this season, and it came up with a key play in this one for a great touchdown. And then we saw another great pass, which was a beautiful NFL-level throw. Truly was an NFL-level throw to Shakir for a touchdown. Wasn't even empty yet. It wasn't even open yet, and Bachmeier threw it under pressure, threw the ball to the one spot in the end zone where he knew his wide receiver was going to go, and Shakir ended up connecting for the touchdown. I mean, it was a beautiful throw and catch. Boise State using the passing game early to keep San Diego State truly on their feet, then working off of that passing game to mix in the running game, which was effective early with Helani, and then Boise State started to go almost too into the run. I mean, they were starting off every first down with a running play, and the more they did that, the less effective it got because San Diego State knew it was coming, and they weren't playing off that. They weren't going play action off the run to a pass. It was pretty obvious they were going to a pass when they did. They weren't giving a solid hard fake to that running game. So Boise State really started going into that running game, and it instantly sucked all the creativity out of the offense. Once Boise State started to try and rely on that running game, they went to a run it up the middle, mid-range pass or deep ball. They completely took out the short pass option. They completely took out the passes to the tight end. They had a couple of screen passes here and there and a couple of dump down passes to outlet receivers. But as far as the overall creativity of the play calling, it took a nosedive after Boise State started using the run game because Tim Plow became too reliant on that. That's an issue that Tim Plow has seen all season, is that something starts to work for him and he just goes all in on that one thing, whether it's throwing the ball to a specific receiver like Khalil Shakir, or throwing a deep ball, or running a particular kind of play, like for instance a outside run throw, or handing it off to the running back. When something starts to work, he kind of goes all in on that one thing because he thinks he's found a weak spot in the defense, but the defense quickly adapts to that. I mean, to truly be able to stand up against a defense all game long, you have to keep hitting them with different variations, and it's not that he becomes predictable necessarily. I wouldn't go that far in my critique to say he runs a predictable offense, but he definitely becomes too conservative and definitely pushes into one specific thing. So running game working early, Boise State kind of went into that, and from pretty much the end of the second half, or just towards the end of the second half there, all the way through the second half, Boise State was either running it or trying to throw it deep, and not finding true success in either of those for Boise State. So, yeah, Bachmeier, I've already talked about him pushing it into bad situations. Obviously, 2 interceptions, both of them on really one throw right to the linebacker. Right to the linebacker who should have had the pick, deflected it up in the air, and ended up getting picked off of that. And then obviously another interception there later on in the game. So Boise State, unfortunate with coming in with a rough start. Combination of factors here, coming off of cold and Bachmeier not being in tune with his wide receivers. And then even despite that, they were still doing well early, 16-3, before Boise State and Tim Plow kind of shot themselves in the foot here and took away a lot of that creative element of their passing and running game that was being so effective early on in this one. So just a couple other comments here. Helani, like I said, had another great game, 70 yards rushing overall, so ended his 100-yard game, 100-plus yard rushing streak that he'd been on the last 3 games, but he was still running with power. He was still giving everything he could. But Boise State kind of did him a disadvantage by going so heavy into him that the defense was able to key in on what Boise State was doing and come out and limit his effectiveness versus being able to go over the top and create some opportunities there by pushing the secondary back. Then obviously Sears comes in. Bachmeier goes out for whatever reason, whether he was injured or whether it was a decision to go with a new personnel play style. Bachmeier wasn't playing great there late in the game. So they go with Sears, and we see these issues of a fresh Sears coming in with everything that I've already discussed. I'm not going to rehash that. Obviously throws a pick there to end the game for Boise State. So the real issues in this one, kind of things we've already talked about it, inconsistency in the passing game, whether it was Bachmeier being unable to execute because of underthrows, overthrows, or straight to the defender interceptions, or because of a lack of creativity, where Bachmeier was being forced into positions where he was having to throw the ball in areas where he really shouldn't, because there really just wasn't any other opportunities. I mean, an offense for this team that would work perfectly with an offensive line that is struggling, but a running back who is great in the receiving game and gives you some abilities in the running game, and a deep core of wide receivers. I mean, it truly is a deep core of wide receivers. Even Boise State doesn't use them effectively all the time. Would be a quick, not necessarily a full pass-heavy attack, but a kind of spread the ball around, quick passing game. Boise State, pretty much every single play was trying to get past the first down marker. You don't have to do that. You can do some you can do some underneath passes that get you 4 or 5 yards, and then come back the next play, and get another 4 or 5 yards. And you don't have to get 10 plus yards on every single throw, but it just looked like Boise State was going for 15 or more yards on every single pass, especially in that second half when the running game started to kind of suck away from the creativity and become a crutch here for the offense versus being an assist to the passing game. So C plus overall. I spent a lot of time discussing some general concepts, so I'm not going to go too deep into the specifics on this one. I think everybody watched the game and they know what went wrong. So that's kind of the offense there overall, C plus. Defense, B plus performance, especially in the first half. Was a great performance by the defense. In the first half, Boise State held San Diego State to 29 rushing yards and 212 yards passing. They were having a great game. Kaniho, the younger, as the announcers were calling him, number 14 there. So Kaniho was having a great game in coverage overall. I mean, he was just doing a great job shutting them down. Some massive hits by Jones, the safety, and the run defense was just incredible. I mean, it was down after down after down that San Diego State was turning it over. So in the first 6 drives for San Diego State, they only scored 3 points and missed a field goal. So 3 points off of 6 drives in the first half. And then, or not the first half, but in the first 6 drives. And then a quarterback change came in. So it went from Johnson to Brookshire. And for whatever reason, and this might be part of that new defensive coordinator, new players in key positions, not able to adapt as quickly. For whatever reason, that quarterback change threw Boise State for a loop. So they went from 6 drives for 3 points. The next 4 drives, San Diego State scored on every single one of them. And they were having a great passing defense early in this one. And then, so Jones here actually was 9 of 20 for 98 yards on the game. As soon as Brookshire came in, he went 11 of 15 for 192 yards. Picked up both of the early score, or one of the early scores there through the air, and then another one from a short run up the middle there. But And actually, the first touchdown was against Kaniho. So Kaniho went. I had just written down that Kaniho was having an amazing game, amazing first half, and then literally the next drive is targeted by Brookshire and gives up a touchdown. And he gave up a lot of passing plays there in the second half. So for whatever reason, that shift, because he was playing great in the first half, and then the second half he isn't. I mean, the one determiner there is the shift in quarterback, and it wasn't him only. I mean, there was the whole defense went from being consistent against the running game in the first half to giving up 118 yards rushing overall. So 29 to 118, was completely unable to stop the quarterback running game. 46 yards on rushing by the quarterback here, and if not for a blocking penalty on San Diego State, I mean, you could add like another 50 or 40 or however long that scramble was. You could add another 40 on there. So Boise State completely unable to stop the quarterback run. The passing game was wide open, especially on third down, and the defense was still doing a good job of holding the running game solid against the running back running game, and in the first and second down. And then third down, wide open. San Diego State on their touchdown drive picking up 2 third downs to go down and score on their second touchdown drive, picking up 2 third downs to go down and score. So for whatever reason, that quarterback change threw Boise State for a loop. Now, they were able to adjust, but it took them a while, and by that time the damage had been done. One of the announcers said too little too late, and I agree with them there. So 24 straight points. Boise State goes from holding a 16-3 lead to a 16-27 point deficit. Then Boise State, on the last 4 drives for San Diego State, holds them scoreless. So they were able to adapt. I know it didn't seem like that. There were some comments about Boise State not being able to adapt on the Boise State page, and that's not 100% true. They were able to adapt eventually to this defense, holding them scoreless. One of those, another missed field goal, so that could have been 3 points, but it wasn't. But holding them scoreless on the last 4 drives, giving their offense a chance to go out and win this game. But for whatever reason, 4 straight drives is not a good look for defense, and Boise State has got to be able to adjust quicker to that. Now, obviously this is still a young defense, but I give them less slack than I give the offense because of what an incredible job they've done turning themselves around from the beginning of the year. I mean, the Boise State down 2-3 or 2 games won, 3 losses early in the season. A lot of that was on the defense. They would tighten up in the second half, but the first halves were really bad, and a lot of that 2-3 run was because of the defense, a real weak element for this team early on. Second half of the season, they have been lights out amazing, and in the first half of this game, lights out amazing for Boise State. And the big part of the reason that they are 5-2 here, or coming this game were 5-1, was because of the defense. So the offense has still been trying to figure themselves out, has not become a consistent weapon for this team this whole season, but the defense has. This defense now is one of the best defenses for Boise State here at the end of the season. One of the best defenses for Boise State that I have seen in any of their recent history. I mean, go back at 2015 was the last time that Boise State really had a strong, consistent defense. I mean, Boise State lost a lot of games in that season, but it wasn't necessarily because of their defense. So you go back to 2015 is really the last time Boise State had a strong, consistent defense. And Boise State in this season has finally built themselves up a strong defense that isn't just a big play defense. They have that ability that we didn't see this game, but not just a big play defense and the ability to make big hits and get big interceptions and turnovers, but is able to hold teams consistently to minimal points and minimal yardage for the most part. And that is this defense that we have now. So I'm grading them on a much tougher curve here than I would the offense based on how this defense has improved. So it is disappointing to see a defense that has done such a great job of adapting this season to struggle to adapt to a new quarterback. And it's not just this year's defense has had that issue. Boise State for a long time has had an issue adjusting to brand new quarterbacks. You think a quarterback goes out and it's a good thing. I think a quarterback going out against Boise State is one of the worst things that can happen to their defense because for whatever reason, Boise State is not prepared for that change. And we all memorably remember the backup for BYU coming in and winning that game against us in 2019. And that wasn't the first time that a guy that wasn't necessarily supposed to be the starter for BYU had won the game. Or Oklahoma State memorably, not this season, but in 2018, the guy who started that game was not the starter that Boise State prepared for, and he had a great game. So Boise State has pretty much consistently struggled against guys that weren't expected to be the starters or that had to enter the game after the starter came out. So it's hard to pin down exactly what that is. I mean, it isn't super hard. I mean, Boise State is preparing for one specific style of play from one quarterback, and so they have difficulty adjusting to the next guy. But against a quarterback like San Diego State and a defense that has shown the mental ability to make those adjustments, to struggle so badly against a quarterback who is a very similar play style to Johnson. I mean, he was a starter earlier on the season. He is able to throw pretty much. I think he's a better passer slightly than Johnson, but overall about the same as Johnson, and at least as good or it may be slightly worse than Johnson as far as running goes. I mean, they're pretty much right on the same page as far as their skill sets. The fact that Boise State has such issue adjusting to a different quarterback who is basically the same style of quarterbacks they've seen early on is inexcusable, I think. So Boise State here losing the game here, not necessarily because of their defense. Obviously, they held the San Diego State to 27 points. That's a good effort, and they had a great first 6 drives and a great last 4 drives. But it's very frustrating to see a defense this good after showing what they have been able to do this season to have 4 drives where they just can't figure it out. I mean, anything San Diego State threw at them, they really weren't able to handle in those 4 scoring drives for San Diego State. So I am going to give the defense a B+ overall. I think that their first 6 drives and their last 4 drives earned that. Overall, San Diego State averages 183.1 yards per game rushing, and they held them to 118. If you take out the 46 quarterback rushing yards, it's 72 rushing yards by the running back. So that's way below San Diego State's overall average. They were very porous against the passing game, and that is disappointing in this one. San Diego State going up almost 100 and over 100 yards passing more than they generally do. They usually only throw for 145 yards per game. But there were some big moments for Boise State in this one. They had some close interceptions that they weren't able to hold on to. Noah was able to force a fumble, but they weren't able to pick it up there. Noah, number 7, the linebacker. Boise State was able to have some big plays early on, some great defensive effort, and they gave their offense a chance in the end to win this one with 4 straight drives in the last part of this game where they were able to stop the offense and get them off the field. But overall, those 4 scoring drives right in the middle of the game was a death nail for Boise State in this one. I do have one more thing to comment on the defense before I close, and that's JL Skinner. JL Skinner, and a lot of fans noticed it, was not very aggressive in this game, and he has really been, compared to the why he started the season, the last few games has been very much far less aggressive than he was to start the season. The hits have gotten much less intense. We haven't seen as many highlight reel hits from Skinner, if any, and I think that is really symptomatic of the amount of penalties that he had called on him, those targeting penalties called on him. And that's really disappointing. That's really unfortunate. I understand the purpose of the targeting penalty to protect players, and I think overall it does a good job. But when that penalty causes a player like JL Skinner, who plays with such intensity and aggression, is just incredible to watch, and takes that play style away from him and out of the game, that is disappointing. And part of it, I think, that is Skinner just adapting to being able to play the same. You can still play aggressive. It gets harder and harder with the way that the referees call the game, but you can still be aggressive without targeting, obviously. But a lot of those targeting calls were very, very questionable, and there were even a couple of targeting calls that got overturned, but it just seemed like the referees were going after him. And that level of antagonism by the referees, I think, really took a lot out of Skinner over in this last part of the season. So I'm really hoping that over the offseason, he's coming into the bowl game here, so in between now and the bowl game and then the offseason to next season, he's able to work with the coaches, developing, being able to harness that aggression that he has, that raw skill level that he is able to bring to the field, able to harness that in a way that still presents itself on the playing field without the targeting. It's understandable why he would back off a little bit, but in a game like this, obviously, like San Diego State, you have everything's on the line. I say go for it. I'm not saying go target people, and I don't think that's his intention, but I say go play with 100% aggression across the board. And if Boise State gets into a bowl game, I think that Boise State, depending on who that opponent is, but Boise State, specifically their key players here, they should just put it all out on the field. I mean, bowl games are the perfect point to do that. You have nothing to lose. You might as well, you've already reached the pinnacle of your success that season, so you might as well open up your whole playbook. And I think that also goes to your players. They might as well just give it their all, because they got a long off season before they get a chance to go prove themselves again. And so I'd love to see JL Skinner come to the next game here in the bowl game to come out aggressive and to show that same play style that we saw early on. I mean, other players on this team are stepping up and being that level of player. Jones, for example, he's been so much more aggressive the later half of the season than he was early on. Love seeing that out of him. And Biggers has had some big hits. I mean, I think Tubner had a big hit. I mean, it's hard to count the big hits because all Boise State players have had great big hits throughout the season. This aggressive level of play style, it comes from the head coach here in Andy Avalos, bringing that style to this defense, because that's the type of player that he was always bringing it 100%, and he brings that to his team, and they play with that style now as a unit overall. So, JL Skinner got a lot of the attention early on, but the truth is that was a spirit that was filtered through the entire defense, and we especially see that in the second half. But it is noticeable when a player of his stature and his key position in his safety here, and the way that he's played early on in the season, it is noticeable when he backs off a little bit, and I would like to see Skinner step up a little bit. I'm not blaming him for the loss. This isn't what this is about. I've already analyzed the defense, and I'm moving on. This is more about him specifically as a player and what I've noted over the last few games, what other fans have noted as well. I say, Mountain West referees are the worst referees in the nation, but they can't do much to you anymore this year, especially in the first half in the bowl game. If you get kicked out of that, who cares? Because it's the bowl game, that you're not going to impact the team the rest of the season because the season's over. Just bring it and give it your all. If I was to say one thing here for Skinner, and I hope we'll see that next game against whoever they play in the bowl game. So that's the defense. B+ the defense, offense C+. Real quick here on the special teams, B- for the special teams. I'm going to give that because the punting, the coverage of the punting, and the attempts at the block, I really liked seeing that out of Boise State. Real strong effort by them. They almost got to that punt a couple of times, and one of them was actually one of the punts that they went after actually impacted the punt. It was not the typical beautiful, glorious punt that this kick punter for San Diego State usually has. Even though it did end up going like 50-plus yards, it wasn't 60 or 70-plus yards like it usually was, rolled up at the 30, gave Boise State's offense decent field position. So it was definitely having an impact on the punter today, even if it wasn't getting through and blocking those punt. And Boise State had it, Tubner actually, I just talked about him. An amazing job stopping the fake punt by San Diego State. Great awareness by the unit overall to go in and stop that fake punt. So Boise State's there. That helps them get this B-. What takes away from their potential, and I really do think the special teams wasn't necessarily a true strength for Boise State today, was a missed extra point by Dalmas. That's weird to see from him. I don't think it's symptomatic of everything. Even players that are great, and he is great, miss things occasionally. I mean, people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're all human. That's part of the great things of life, is that it's okay to make mistakes from time to time. And Dalmas is a player, he's going to be probably rough on himself, because that's the first PAT he's missed this season. He's only missed 2 PATs in his entire career so far at Boise State. Other than that, he's perfect across the board. And this one was that close to being perfect. I mean, it went right off the upright. So Dalmas, of course, missing that PAT. Unfortunate for him. I don't know if it impacted the game so much. I mean, it did make it an 11-point game prior to San Diego State scoring that last touchdown, but Boise State was still within 2 scores. I think it's more of a personal pride kind of thing, and obviously it's a mistake, so it goes against the overall grade here for the special teams. But he was 1 of 1 for his field goals, and congratulations to Dalmas. He is now the holder of the Boise State record for most field goals made in a row in a single season. So at 18, he made a 22-yard field goal, so he now has 18 straight. So outstanding job to Jonah Dalmas. Going to be one of the greatest Boise. I think he is already, but by the time his career is over, and I think we're still going to see another at least 2 years out of him, he is going to be one of the greatest Boise. He is going to be the greatest Boise State kicker of all time if he's able to keep up this this perfection that he has, that he shoots for, that he brings to the games, and his ability to make those key clutch kicks is just an incredible job. So I want to hype up Dalmas because he's gotten that record, and that's big. Obviously, the missed extra point is upsetting, more for him, I think, than anybody else. But I think he's going to come back stronger from this one. It didn't seem to impact him, and he was able to make a field goal from basically the same spot that he missed the extra point. But the real negative on this unit overall today was Velasquez, unfortunately, a kicker who has or punter who has a lot of leg. He really is. I mean, he has a 72-yarder, I think, is his long for his career. He's kicked a 60-yarder this season. He's kicked a 60-yarder every season that he's played. So, and his season overall average is 44. Actually, it's 43.9, but 44 overall. He has a 60-yarder long, and his average on his career is 41.1 yards per kick. But today, he was sub 40 overall on 7 punts on his average, so he had 37.9. He had a long of 55 that helped bump up that average, because otherwise we're probably looking at about a 34-yard average overall for punts today. And it wasn't only one or two of these. I think only one of these was a situational style punt. 1 or 2 of them was a situational style punt where he was trying to punt it short. Other than that, I mean, Boise State was backed up, and he was trying to kick it as far as he could, and he was still only making it to about the 30-35 with a lot of room behind there that he could have punted it to. I mean, he was looking at a lot of 30-ish to 37, 40-yard punts, which is really disappointing for a punter with his abilities. And in San Diego State, they were bringing the block late, but they weren't really getting to him, or didn't really seem to be getting there and being in a spot where they should have impacted him early in this one. It is a props to him that he didn't have any shanks in that one. Nothing that cost Boise State the game. It's just that Velasquez, this was a time for him to shine, going against one of the best punters in the nation here in San Diego State, the statistically best punter in the nation. And he has a lot to offer, Velasquez. I mean, he has a big leg. He's shown the ability to flip the field on many occasions for Boise State. And unfortunately today, San Diego State was pretty much gaining, I even wrote it down at one point, that they were gaining like 10 yards every time they punted the ball away, because when Boise State punted, they were 10 yards closer because their punter was punting at like 20 yards, and then Boise State would gain like 8 to 10 yards and have to punt. And then Velasquez was pointing at their punter was punting at like 60 yards, or 20 yards further than Velasquez was, so like 60 yards, and then Boise State would gain about 8 yards or so and then have to punt, and then Velasquez was punting at only like 30 or 40 yards. And so overall, I mean, San Diego State seemed to be moving up the field whenever they punted that ball, and that was a real issue today with Velasquez. That could have made some differences here for Boise State as far as field position goes, especially with a punter like San Diego State that's going to be able to pin you deep. If Velasquez had been able to pin San Diego State deep, the impact of the punting game might not have been quite as big when San Diego State kicked that ball away. So that's really Boise State. I think B- overall is well-deserved because of the effort there by the punt coverage unit, putting pressure on the San Diego State punter, stopping that 4th down attempt at fake punt. and then Dom was making that field goal there. But overall, B- effort by special teams in a game that wasn't necessarily their strongest of the season. Okay, real quick here to end this video is looking at my 3 keys to the game, and this is going to be real fast. I've already talked about most of these overall. So the first one here is forced turnovers. That's going to get an F because Boise State didn't force any turnovers. They had 2 good points, good attempts at them. I mean, we had one that Conejo jumped the route. He was right there on that. It probably would have been a tough catch for the Conejo, the younger, number 14. It probably would have been a tough pick for him, but the ball popped right up in the air, and his brother, number 28, was right there. I mean, he was standing right there, and he just kind of watched the ball fall. And he had a little bit better awareness, but Johnny on the spot, he could have got that, and where they were on the field, that would have been a touchdown if he'd been able to pick that ball off and run it back. So both Canillos had a good shot at that pick, and neither of them were able to get a hold on it. That was disappointing. And then at the end zone, Biggers had a pick go right through his hands. That would have been a big point for Boise State to be able to get the turnover on that play. I believe San Diego State ended up getting a field goal after that. I believe that was the one that they got a field goal on. They got points of some form, either a field goal or a touchdown, but it had been a big momentum shift to be able to get that interception. Unfortunately, unable to get picks in either of those plays. And then Noah forced a fumble in San Diego State's territory inside of their, I think it was inside their 30 is where the ball was, like the 22 or something like that. He forced a fumble, and San Diego State recovered it. So Boise State unable to get that fumble recovery. So 3 missed attempts or missed chances for turnovers that would have been big impactors in this game. So F overall for forced turnovers. Second here is focus on the block. I didn't hear say block the punt. I said focus on the block. So I'm going to give them an A overall. If they'd been able to block a punt, I'd give them an A+. But focus on the block, give them an A overall. They attempted it pretty much all game except for like one punt there at the end that they were trying to get a return on by Shakir. Unable to get the return on. It was a great coverage overall. But focus on the block, give them a solid A. They absolutely tried it all game. Great calls by the special teams coach here. And they were able to force a punt that was not up to the quality of the San Diego State punter, even if it wasn't technically a bad punt. It was a punt that was definitely impacted by the special teams unit there. And then the third one here is focus on the passing game early. Boise State, they did this early on. There was a lot of deep balls, mid-level balls, screen passes, short passes, and it was effective for them, and they got 16 points off of it. But I'm only going to give them a B on this because they went away from it too soon and were never able to get it back. I said that in order for Tim Plow to be creative in this one, he needed to be forced to pass the ball, because I think that when you have a running game with a young offensive coordinator, it becomes a crutch, especially for a team like Boise State that necessarily hasn't had success running the game. When you see the ability to run the game, ability to run the ball in the game, you get all excited and you want to focus in on that one thing. So I wanted Boise State to go to the air, to force them to be creative, to force them to keep San Diego State off balance, and because that's San Diego State's main weak spot. I mean, that through the air is where they've given up a lot of yards all season. I mean, San Diego State average is giving up 236.4 yards per game, so that is their weak point versus the running game where they hold teams to under 77.5 yards per game for the season average. So Boise State, unfortunately, going away from that passing game early and then never able to capture the same, I'm not going to say magic necessarily, but the same level of play that they found early in the game, because they're basically forced into these long throw situations or mid-level throws without actually bringing in the full offensive capability of the passing game, especially in those quick short throws that we saw early in this one. So Boise State, unfortunately, I'm going to give them a B overall in focusing on the passing game. I think that was a big impactor on why they didn't necessarily get the win in this one. So Boise State, that's the wrap for the regular season. Boise State will have a bowl game waiting them, assuming that they accept their bid. I would assume with a brand new head coaching staff like this, you want to end on a positive note, regardless of who you play. You want to end on a positive note. You want to go and getting a bowl win for this team. I'm going to spend a second here talking about this. This season that Boise State has had overall, starting the season 2-3, now they're in a spot where they were competing for the Mountain West Championship game and have a bowl game. This is a big win for this coaching staff. They have turned this season around. This is a completely different team than we saw at the beginning of the year. Boise State's on a 5-2 run to end the season, which is a good effort by this program. They were, like I said, in a spot to win this Mountain West Championship. They have one of the most dominant defenses in the Mountain West in the later half of the season, and the offense is starting to show a lot more spark and ability with that running game coming back into it. So Boise State absolutely needs to get into that bowl game. Whatever bowl game they get, they should absolutely accept it and get a chance here to springboard into next season. Go out strong, have a dominant performance in the bowl game, get a bowl win for this first-year head coaching staff, which is a big win for them considering how the season started and considering that it's a rebuild year. Get to those 8 wins, get that bowl game, and prepare for next season, which I believe, while Boise State is not necessarily going to be back next year, I think that they're going to take a big step forward towards being back in the 3rd year under Andy Avalos just around the corner. So I'm excited for this program, excited for this bowl game. I can't wait to do my game preview for the bowl game here. It's been a interesting season for Boise State. It's been a tough season for Boise State fans, but we've seen a lot of improvement, and I'm excited about the future here. Go out, Boise State, and attack the future, and excited to see what Boise State does. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue!